So for those of you who wonder, like Aaron and I, we check in with each other during the week, and we take each other's pulse, and we find out what is it that we want to talk about, or and then we just have general conversations about things that go on, life happenings and all of that. And so I asked Aaron, I said, hey, did we ever do a segment on manifestation? And Aaron was like, well, Aaron, what did you say?
I don't think we have.
Yeah, I don't think we have either.
Yeah.
So I thought that this would be a good one to do, because I did a live stream earlier this week, and I was talking about how, basically I've come to the conclusion that prayer as an exercise is pretty worthless. Now, people get mad when you say that, and some people actually get liberated, because they're like, God, that's a burden lifted off, because I don't have to worry about my prayer life anymore. But this one lady said, she said, I was listening to you and you sounded good until you started talking about that you get what you believe in yourself that you have. Mm-hmm. And she went on about how she felt like manifestation was not really a good thing, and so I thought about that, and I'm hoping that I can help her and help some others that are stumbling over this. Because here's the thing, Aaron, you and I both been pastors, we've been ministers, and we mighty men of God. And we've laid hands on the sick and we've seen them recover.
Yes, sir.
I think that you and I are pretty much in the same boat, that we've seen pretty much everything short of the dead being raised.
Right.
Okay. So that's cool. Right. Except like me personally, I have a son who is a type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
And healing never came his way. And I remember my son when he was a little guy, and he would pray, and he's doing all the things that he would see me doing. He's laying out prostrate on the floor, praying in tongues, 5 years old, decreeing his healing. Mm-hmm. And it never happened. Mm-hmm. And his faith remained strong up until it didn't. Mm-hmm. Now my son is a spiritualist. He has his own podcast, and he talks about vibration and spirituality and all of these things. And all of that's really cool. But the thing is that I'm like, okay, if prayer worked, mm-hmm. then every believer, this would be a sign that this would be a sign for you to get your shit together with Jesus. Right. Because all believers get healed. Right. All believers prosper. All believers have their dream job, their dream spouse, that everything works out. And of course, the walk it back Christians will say, Jesus said, in this world, you'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. Well, Jesus, what fucking good is it that you overcome the world if I still have to suffer in it?
Yeah, right.
Help me Jesus, break that down for me.
It's like, good for you, Jesus. What about
exactly? Yeah, right. And I know there's some people that say, we'll say that's bordering on blasphemy, and honestly, I have less than a fuck to give about that. But this is the thing. I really believe that you receive what you have confidence for. And I don't want to say receive what you believe, because that has so many Christian word of faith connotations to it.
Yeah.
But if you have confidence, like I'm going to share a story real quick, and then I'm going to shut up. Last year was an amazing, and by saying amazing, I mean completely fucked up year for family sickness and loss. Right. We had a lot of people get sick, and then we had a lot of people die. I mean, it's like the two of the three closest people that my wife has to her, she lost them last year, and so my dad has what's called an LVAD. It's called left ventricle assist device.
Okay.
And it's essentially an artificial heart, right? And he got this 7 years ago. Now, mind you, the average person with an LVAD lives 3 years after they get it. My dad's on year 7.
Wow.
And last year, he had to have a lung biopsy because they saw something on his lung. They wanted to check it out. But because he has this artificial heart, he's got blood thinners, right? So after this biopsy, he starts bleeding in his lungs. So he's got to go to the hospital. At this point, hospital visits are not really a big thing for him, but he goes in the hospital and they're, checking him out and everything. And come to find out, he has fucking COVID. This 83-year-old man with half a heart, he's got COVID, right? And as if to go to bad to worse, he got on. He was on the ventilator. He's on the ventilator for 6 weeks. Right. Now, let me say this, because this was right. He went in the hospital right before Thanksgiving, the Monday before Thanksgiving. That Friday, I talked to my dad on the phone, and he was like, yeah, he said, I got to go in. I got to have this lung biopsy, blah, 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 blah. Right. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, how do you feel about all this? He said, well, he says, son, he said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. But he said, I'm not done.
Wow.
Now, if you know my dad, my dad is like, he's a force of will. I mean, this is a guy that manifests shit. He lives in his dream house. He's got his dream wife. He's got his dream life. My dad, he's lived a good life. Well, he gets in the hospital. And so meanwhile, I've talked about my previous wife, and she died in 1994. We were a young couple, had been married 5 years, and she passed away. And so I remained close with her family for years. I mean, up until today, I'm still close with them. But my mother-in-law, she was my crown jewel of that family. Well, anyway, she got sick the same time my dad did. She went in the hospital, but she got out. She went back home, right? Or back to the assisted care facility where she was living. And then right before my dad gets out of the hospital, she gets sick again and she dies. Broke my heart. But here's the thing. I have an interesting insight into both of these situations because, see, I know all the people who were praying for Dickie. That's my dad. And I know all the people that were praying for Florence. That was my mommy. So I know people are praying. I know people are fasting. I know people are speaking in tongues. I know there are prayer vigils and prayer wheels and prayer meetings that are going on for both of them. But one lives and one dies. So again, now my dad really got serious about Jesus after he had his LVAD, right? He's involved in men's ministry and all this stuff. But my mother-in-law, she was involved in church. She was the church mother. She was, very much involved in all. I mean, everything, all things being equal. Now, if Jesus is the determiner, then that means they should both be alive today. But here's the thing, and this is a funny thing. Like 3 years ago, I took my two youngest sons to New Jersey for my mother-in-law's 90th birthday party. And when we were at this party, she said, I'm gonna live to be 200. And at that point, she beside the fact that she had lost her sight through because of glaucoma, beside that, she was the picture of health. But all of a sudden, in 3 years' time, it went from, she's being a picture of health to it just completely going south. And then now she's dead. Okay. And today is her birthday, by the way. So happy heavenly birthday, mommy. And I'll raise one to you. I know you're probably having a vodka wherever you are. So, but anyway, I say all this to say that if prayer was the answer to all of this, if Jesus was the answer to all of this, then that means that every single believer should be healed. That should be the sign, that believers are healed, that they are prospered, that they are delivered, that all of blah, 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 all the stuff that we would always chant as talisman, right, as in our Christian ministry. But here we are. So my thing is, I say all this to say that the reason why my dad is alive is not because of God. Because if God was the factor, Florence would still be here. That's not the thing. What it is that my dad simply willed himself not to die. He's here because he wants to be here. And just like he manifested his dream job, my dad went from driving the bus to being the CEO of the Minneapolis St. Paul Transit Authority.
Very impressive.
He had 2 failed marriages prior to my stepmom, but they've been married almost 50 years.
Wow.
And all of these things, like his life has been, I attribute his life to the force of his will, that he just simply had confidence in what was in him to produce, and he produced it. And so when I say manifestation, Aaron, I'm sorry, I've taken a whole lot of time.
You keep going. You keep going.
It's this. And I'm experiencing this now in my own life, that I get what I have confidence that I have. And what I don't have confidence that I have, I don't get. And it's really that simple. And so it's really raising my vibration, raising my consciousness, raising my confidence to the point where simply shit just flows out of me. And when I do that, I see that happening. And here's the funny thing. I'm going to pick on our buddy Kyle Butler, because Kyle is a dude who just, he confidently exudes it, and it happens. I'm going to pick on another one of our friends, Aaron Abke. Right. Aaron is fucking killing it now.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm so happy for him and all the success that he's experiencing, but he's experiencing this not because God favors him, not because he prayed, because he fasted. It's that Aaron looked inside himself, Kyle looked inside himself, and they said, God damn it, this is mine, and I'm just going to have it. So, okay, I'm done talking now.
I remember when Aaron's page started to explode, his YouTube page started to really take off. And I remember, like, in 1 week or so, I don't know, maybe it was a month, he went from, 1,000 followers, wherever he was at the time, I can't remember, to like 10 or 15,000 followers in a pretty short space of time. And so the next time we talked, I asked him, I said, man, how'd that happen for you? He said, well, I'll be honest. He said, I've just been using the law of attraction to see it and see myself with it.
Wow.
In order to manifest it.
And there you have it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just further validating what you're saying there in regards to Aaron. And I agree with you 100% for sure. And this was something that, we figured out early on in ministry. We called it faith then, but we realized, like, the way I would teach it back then, Jesus said, if you spoke to the mountain and did not doubt in your heart, that the mountain would move. He never said God would speak to the mountain. He never said you'd speak to God and God would speak to the mountain and the mountain would move. And so I started teaching prayer that the universe, or our environment, responds to us, responds to our voice.
Yeah.
And I can say, after a couple decades of this, that I'm not sure I can think of a time that we got results that we didn't do that. I can think of lots of times that we did that and got results, but I'm not sure I can think of one time. And I heard somebody say with prayer, well, I prayed and it happened. And I heard somebody say once, well, dead clock is right twice a day, and a blind squirrel can find a nut. But I mean, let's be honest. Exactly what you said. You laid it out beautifully. The prayer is a crapshoot, right?
Yep.
And there's no way to even attribute necessarily cause and effect. But when you see results, when you have that confidence within yourself, when you realize it's coming from within me, I'm shaping it and creating it in my mind, in my imagination, in my confidence in myself, and it's coming forth from me, and you see results again and again and again, then I think you got something you can hang your hat on, right?
Yep. I asked people, I said, how many times in your lifetime did the sun not rise in the east? How many times? And I can ask that of anyone.
Right.
And the answer is never. The sun has always risen in the east. Well, how many times did the sun not set in the west? What always does, right? And how many times have you held an object, right, and dropped it, that it didn't fall? And so now I'm going to say something really ridiculous here, right? Because if you have a Honda, right, Hondas are notoriously reliable, right? So how many times did your Honda Civic not start? And the answer to that is probably something asymptotically close to zero, right? So if the sun is that reliable, if gravity is that reliable, and if your fucking Honda is that reliable, then prayer should be at least half as reliable, but it isn't. And when I looked at that, I said, oh man, this is horrible. How can I tell anybody to pray when you basically your odds of hitting a blackjack at a casino are better than your prayers being answered?
Yeah, true.
So I say all this to say, so how do we go about getting things manifested?
Yeah. I think there's some real keys. Let me just say this about healing too, because I remember we had a lady in our church about a decade ago that her body, she was fighting cancer. And this woman's faith was as strong as I'd ever seen. I mean, she could look this thing in, be in the hospital on oxygen, whatever, looking at in the teeth, right? Looking at it in the face, looking at it in the eye, staring it down. And her faith didn't seem to waver. And I remember, and of course, the whole church was behind her and believing God. You know the drill.
Yeah.
And I remember going to her and her husband's house and having dinner, and she just looked at me and she said, "You know what?" She said, "I am just tired. I'm just tired. I'm tired of fighting, tired of being here, and I'm just ready to go to heaven. I'm just ready to move on."
Yep.
And so I said, "Okay." I said, "Then let's get you ready and your family ready for that. Let's go that direction."
Yep.
And of course, I kept that as a private conversation. And I don't remember the exact time frame, 2 weeks maybe. Within a short frame of time, she was in the hospital or hospice or wherever they had her, I can't remember, dying. And you had, these prayer warrior friends that were trying to keep her alive. Well, they didn't know any better,
Yeah.
And I remember trying to help them shift from, it's okay to die. I mean, it's okay to prepare for someone to die and to do that moment and do that time with those people. They got so mad at me because I had lost faith. So my point in all that is we just don't know all the ins and outs of a person's life, and the manifesting, law of attraction, faith, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
It's coming from within us. It's working primarily with things in our own lives. I don't really have the right to manifest something for you, Derek, nor do you need me to,
Right.
right? And I think sometimes people need to understand that there's some boundaries there, and they need to take care of their own business at home
Yeah.
and not worry so much about uh, what's happening with other people. I know that's hard, it may sound harsh and uncaring, but
No, that's the truth, man.
yeah. But let me tell this story, talking about how. So my wife and I struggled with infertility for literally decades. And I'm going to tell you something, struggling with infertility in the church is not a picnic,
Mm,
because there's a certain expectation of what a Christian family is supposed to look like.
right.
And if you're quote unquote barren, it's a curse. And people would say the most unkind remarks. It got to where my wife would not go to Mother's Day, church on Mother's Day, because she was sick and tired of somebody coming up and prophesying over her or encouraging her or telling her this is going to be the last Mother's Day that you won't be a mom.
Wow.
So there's probably about 5 years there, Derek, that she skipped. Now we did all the stuff. I mean, we did all the, manifesting
Yeah.
stuff. And this is where I think the resiliency comes in too, right? If flexibility comes in. So my
Yeah.
sister, my oldest sister, had done a foster to adopt successfully with their youngest daughter now. And we looked at that and we thought, well, there's definitely a need in our community for this kind of thing. And we got, jumped through all the hoops. And I'm just joking here, Derek, but I would dare to say somebody that got a top secret clearance in the government didn't go through as many hoops as we did.
I believe it. No, listen. No, there's some truth to that. Is people think that the whole process of adoption is like that it's easy, or dealing with infertility, that it's easy. And no, I know people that have gone through it on both sides, and no.
Now, here's the trick to foster to adopt. You're there as a foster parent. You're there to take care of that child until their parents get their shit together,
Yeah.
or some other member of the family is willing to step up and raise the child in the event that the parents can't. And we wanted a baby because one of the things you deal with if you get an older child, oftentimes that's in the foster care system, you deal with someone who's got reactive attachment disorder,
Mm-hmm.
RAD they call it. And it's very, very difficult to overcome that. And they have all kinds of problems and issues. And that happens in the first 2 or 3 years of life, that damage.
Wow.
So we wanted a baby. Well, the only way you get a baby through foster to adopt, it's not somebody giving it up willingly. It's if the baby is born hooked on drugs.
Hmm.
And so the process is this: a baby's born addicted to whatever substance mom was using. Social services removes that child and then gives the parents every opportunity that they possibly can to get their shit together so that they can get their child back. If the parents aren't willing to go to rehab, aren't willing to, do the things that, and the state pays for it in Colorado, that it's a pretty good system. I mean, it's got its flaws, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the idea is the government doesn't just come in and snatch your children away from you and say, to hell with you. I mean, they really, especially in our community, they really bend over backwards to try to make it work for the parents or for a family member in the best interest of the child, right? So it's always about the best interest of the child. So here was my fear. When you go through infertility, now I don't know what it's like for other people, but I can speak from my own experience. Everything gets weird. Sex gets weird because you're trying to conceive. And then every month that you don't conceive is almost like a loss. Or, if my wife was late on her period or whatever, you get your hopes up, take a pregnancy test comes back negative, and 2 days later she starts or something. So there's a lot of disappointment is my point. And when you do this for years, there's month after month after month after month after month. And we went to fertility specialists and all that stuff. And and I'm taking a long time to tell this story.
No, dude, keep rock on, brother.
But it relates to Father's Day. So the risk was this, that we would bring a baby into our home, become attached to that baby, and then lose the baby 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, some people even 2 or 3 years down the road. And I thought, I don't know if we can handle that kind of a loss. So we stepped out in faith to do this thing.
Okay.
And we were on the waiting list for 7 or 8 months and never got a call. And Father's Day 2010, which was on the 20th that year, I am in worship. I'm still pastoring. I'm in worship, and the Spirit of God, my higher self, source, my intuition, whatever you want to call it, the voice that I recognized at the time as the voice of what I called then the Holy Spirit, said, now's the time for you to become a dad. And I remember, I kind of had this humorous relationship with Holy Spirit back then. And I said, what do you mean now's the time? I know you said it was, I said this, Derrick. I said, I know you said it was the last days 2,000 years ago.
And so you had to come to Jesus moment with the Holy Spirit.
I did. And I think if I would have heard back, like he's saying, now's the time. I don't think I had the consciousness to hear back tomorrow about this time. So what I heard from the Holy Spirit was by the end of the month. I'm like, in the next 10 days, right? Mm-hmm. So we always did a date thing on Mondays where we would go to a movie theater, and we're sitting in the movie theater before the movie starts, and I have to get up and go to the bathroom. So I get up, go to the bathroom, and I get a call from our caseworker, and she says, there's a baby was born addicted to opiates and methamphetamines. So she was like, I think they call it free balling or something like that, where they mix the uppers and the downers.
Speed balling.
Speed balling, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was speed balling with the baby. And so I was in the bathroom. Funny thing about it, I was in the bathroom for like 10 minutes. And my wife's like, something happened. And I come in and I grab her by the arm. The movie's already started. And I said, come on, we gotta go. And she's like freaking out. And I tell her right there in the movie theater, I said, well, we got a call for a baby boy. And I'll never forget this, Derrick. She grabs me by the shirt and she says, is this our son? Like, okay, man of God, time for you to, prophesy. Is this the one we think? And I said, I think so. But here's the thing. We'd had a room ready, but we didn't have anything in the room. We didn't have a bassinet. We didn't have onesies. We didn't have diapers. We didn't have bottles. We weren't ready. And my sister calls. We didn't call anybody. We're just on our way to pick up the baby, and then we were going to bring them, surprise our families.
Yeah.
And my sister calls and says, my husband got a wild hair this weekend, decided to clean out one of the rooms, and it has all the baby stuff. Would you guys be okay if we brought the baby stuff over this afternoon?
Okay.
So they had a bassinet, onesies, bottles, everything we needed. So long story short, they tell us immediately, I think I'd figured it out, Derrick. We were, I want to say 10th or 11th on the list of resources, because this kid had, mom and dad had like 15 brothers and sisters. They had children that were old enough to adopt. Mom had some resources on her side of the family. The dad claimed that he was Navajo. And so if that was the case, then anybody in the Navajo nation that wanted to adopt would be ahead of us in the order of things.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I just felt like God spoke to me. I felt like this is our child. And so what I did was I would go into our basement. We had an unfinished basement at the time. I would get really nervous because in my mind, I would run through this thing of having the baby. The church is excited. They want to do baby shower. You're having all this excitement of having your first child, which isn't your child. And all I could think about was that day that maybe we'd have to take that last drive, where we would go and give him over to whoever was going to raise him. And that was it, right? And I remember the caseworker was a friend of mine. We went to kindergarten together. Well, she was a year behind me, but we went to the same grade school, middle school, high school, knew each other our whole lives. And she said, Aaron, she said, to be honest, she said, I didn't think that there was any resources here. Had I known all of this, I never would have placed this baby in your care. But when the time comes, this is what she said, when the time comes that you have to give him up, we will connect you guys with grief counselors to help you through the process.
Wow.
So I knew I had to become confident within myself that I did hear from God, that it was my time to be a dad, and that somehow we were ordained to be a family together. So I would go in the basement, and all I would do is mentally put myself in the courtroom where I would see the judge, and I would hear the judge announce, whatever he announces. I would see myself making the promise that I would raise this child as my own. And I would see the paperwork and the birth certificate, which would have our names on it then, and all this taking place, right? Until I was so confident that it was going to happen, that when one of the other caseworkers came in and said, there's another family member that has shown some interest, and she looked at my wife and she looked at Elijah, and she says, I just feel like this baby's supposed to be with you. And she started crying, Derrick, and she said, but I have to do my job. And I remember being able to stand there and tell her, you know what, you do your job as thoroughly and to the best of your ability that you possibly can. I said, back then, how I talked, we are people of faith, and everything's going to be okay. And I'm going to tell you again, it's a long story, but I'm making a long story short.
No.
Within a year, so come around to June again, a day after his first birthday, we walked in that courtroom, just like I'd seen thousands of times in my mind. And the judge, it played out. So 3 months later,
just like you saw it.
Exactly like I saw.
Okay.
So 3 months later, I'm almost done here. 3 months later, we get a phone call. We didn't have all our foster care stuff together. So Julie decides, like, at the last minute to reinstate us. And literally the day after we get reinstated as foster parents, we get a phone call again, this time from a different caseworker. My friend had gone to a different position. And they said, well, mom had another baby. This one's also drug exposed, they called it.
Yep.
You guys be willing to take on a baby brother? So we bring baby brother into our house. Well, this time mom and dad really tried to get their shit together. They went and finished 90 days of rehab. They were jumping through all the hoops that they had to jump through. When both babies were born, they were squatters in somebody's rental home with no utilities. That's how bad off they were.
Dear God.
Surviving. And so we would have to take the baby to visitation, the little brother to visitation. So we would see mom and dad at visitation 4 times a week. And it was agonizing just watching the whole process, but it was such a blessing because they got to know us. And I'll never forget the day they came in and they said, look, we realize that we are not equipped to be parents. We have tried, the dad said, I've had a daily meth addiction for 15 years, and I have tried everything I can. And even if we get clean, so my kidneys are starting to fail, we're just not fit to be parents, but we like you a lot. You have a good vibe, and we give you our blessing to raise both of our boys. And we would just like it if you would include us and send us some pictures and stuff every once in a while.
Wow.
Sadly, they fell off the radar about 3 or 4 months later, and we still don't know where they are. But so that's one of my stories that's very dear to my heart this time of year, especially Father's Day, my son's birthday. And but that was, I believe, the power of manifesting.
Let
me just come back. One more thing.
Go ahead, man.
So we had tried for years, because this point I wanted to make. I got lost in my story. We had tried for years to fix the fertility problem so we could be parents. But at the end of the day, we still got to be parents. And I wouldn't change a thing about it. I wouldn't change a thing. I couldn't imagine my life without both those boys. And I love the fact that they're so completely unlike us in so many ways.
Mm.
It makes it so much more fun and so much more adventurous. And it's been a pleasure, all the way around. So sometimes we get hung up in the process and think, well, if we're going to get our manifestation, it has to happen a certain way. When there are other ways that it can happen, and we don't have to get hung up in the how. That's really the point I wanted to make.
And that is the key point, because somebody had one of our viewers had mentioned, that people place too much emphasis on the law of attraction. And I get it, because like I'm really big on the law of attraction. I really believe that it works. I believe that whatever you project, you can expect, right?
I like
that. But how you said it, Aaron, that it may not come the way you want it, the way you're expecting it to come. And you talked about resiliency and flexibility. Okay, let me give you an example. We were living in Arkansas. We were renting a house that was right down the street from where I worked at Tyson Foods. And so we were living in this house. It was good for the moment, but when my son Anthony was born, it was clear that we're going to outgrow this house. We needed more space. And so I was an associate pastor in a Word of Faith church there. And basically they would always say, go to the open houses, go tour the model homes, because it doesn't cost anything to dream.
Yeah.
So we did that. And we saw a house that we fell in love with. And so Angela and I, we said, this is our house. Now, this house was 4,000 square feet in a gated community, and it was a custom home. I mean, it had so many little luxury touches. And what we did, we went and we did the God thing. We did like marching around Jericho.
Right.
We walked around this house because at that time it was unfenced. We walked around this house and we spoke what we believed over this house.
Yep.
And then we called the pastor and his wife, the bishop and his wife, and asked them to come over and stand in agreement with us. And they did. They did. But when we got the house, their attitude changed, because they were expecting us to buy their house.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of buying their house, we got this house instead. And you could tell every time they came over to the house, they were always sour. Like but the point is that it didn't come the way we expected it to, but it did come. Another thing was, I remember when Hurricane Katrina hit, we had an influx of people from Louisiana coming to Northwest Arkansas. And so there was this thing where this son and his mother and his siblings, they were believing God for an apartment and a car so that he could go to work and they could rebuild their life in Northwest Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I thought was the Spirit of God speaking to me was to go and take my BMW 7 Series that was paid for and sow it into the life of this young man.
Mm.
And so I went up there to the front of the church and I pulled out my car keys and I pledged my car keys to this young man.
Mm.
Well, I wound up pledging my car. It didn't go to the young man. It went to somebody in the church. But
Wow.
Almost immediately after that, we got a brand new Chrysler Town and Country.
Mm.
And at that time, my credit was shit. So to get a Chrysler Town and Country at an interest rate that was not usury,
right,
was really something. Now let me say this, because I have to give this to my wife. I got to give this to Angela, because we're shopping for a vehicle, and I'm thinking I want to get a Honda Odyssey because Hondas are reliable. I just talked about that. But she was like, no. She said the Chrysler Town and Country has stow and go seats, which means we could fold the seats down into the floor and we could carry a shitload of stuff. And we could be a blessing to people by carrying stuff for the ministry. So this was Angela's vision. And she became fixed on a Town and Country minivan. So I just simply abandoned whatever I thought, and I linked my confidence with hers. And it came to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends of all ages, we have not had a shitty car since then. I'm going to tell you, I rarely talk about what kind of car I drive, but I'm going to say it this time. I'm going to say it this time for the sake of this discussion, that we have had 2 Mercedes Benzes, 2 BMWs, an Audi, a Suzuki, and a Porsche 911. These are the cars that we've had in our houses because in faith, in confidence, I gave up my BMW. Now, I'm not saying that you sow and, like how the Bible teaches that, you sow this and you reap this. What I'm saying is that I had confidence in me.
Right.
And here's the thing. See, I thought that this was a God thing, that I'm trusting in God. I have faith in God. No. And here was the thing. When I had the Porsche, we had a guy come to visit our church. And when he found out that that was the pastor's car, he had an issue with that. And he was like, the man of God should not be driving a car like that. That car is sin on wheels. He said that. and actually he was right. He was on to something, but I digress. My wife pointed out, she said, no, that's not us taking money from ministry. That's because Derrick is a software engineer that's highly paid.
Yeah.
And he took his bonus and bought that and paid cash for it. Because that's how we got it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm saying to everybody out here is, like, you've told the story of your sons, and that's a fortuitous story. Yes, you were blessed, but you were blessed not because Great Sky Daddy blessed you.
Exactly.
You were blessed because you and your wife had this confidence in you that these children are coming into our lives and that they are going to be part of us. They are going to be our offspring. They are going to have our name. They are going to have our love. They're going to have our care.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to be our heirs.
Yeah.
And what carries our name forward. That was the confidence that you had.
Right.
And so likewise with these cars, and cars don't ever even come into the same universe, much less the same ballpark as children, but it's this, that we just believe that it was not for us to drive inferior cars, or what we thought were inferior cars.
Sure.
And so here's the thing. Like I'll do videos out by my pool. And one time I did a video and I said, hey, the pool is green. I'm upset about this, right? I said, but that is a first world problem.
Yes, it is.
I have a pool. So I'm grateful that I have this. Here's my point. That when you believe that the universe is going to conspire with you,
right,
to produce a result for you, that result will come to pass. And I know people don't like the law of attraction. Some people get pissed off when you start talking about the law of attraction, but it's just like how you mentioned Aaron Abke. I think Aaron has like 250,000 YouTube subscribers right now. 250,000, which means now mind you that for every subscriber, that means that 5 people are going to see you. That's the math. So 250,000 people means that 2.5 million people are exposed to Aaron Abke at any given moment. Do you know what that means? That means YouTube is paying Aaron Abke for being Aaron Abke.
Yeah.
So you can dislike the law of attraction if you want to. I get it. It's like just another one of these name it and claim it kind of things. But guess what, y'all? You are never going to have any more than your expectation.
Mm-hmm.
If your expectation is down here, guess where you're going to hang out?
Mm-hmm.
If your expectation is up here, guess where you're going to hang out? And so when I talk about manifesting, right, at some point, you have to go into the spirit realm,
Mm-hmm.
go beyond your natural eyes, go beyond your natural 5 senses. And you have to look into the spirit realm and say, this is mine.
Yep.
Now, let me say one quick thing, and I'm going to shut up and I'll kick it back over in your court, Aaron, is that when it comes to people, because people believe, okay, the law of attraction says that if I project this, that I could get this from, and I could get this mate that I want, or I could get these business partners that I want. People is kind of a different thing than stuff.
Come on.
Right? Because you can draw stuff. You can say, I want houses, I want cars, I want watches, I want gold, I want jewelry. You could say all of that, but here's the thing, that when you start talking about people, people have to get into agreement with you. And so the person who comes into your life is the person who senses your vibe like radar.
Right.
And they and like a heat-seeking missile, they hone in on your vibration that's being projected out toward them.
Right.
But you're depending on the mindset of someone else when it comes to people. And so going back to what you said, Aaron, that we have to make the adjustment. It's like you can't just say, well, I'm getting on this frequency and I'm staying on this frequency. No, if you're on this frequency, but you detect a signal, like you start hearing sound, you start hearing music, then what does that do? You begin to adjust the dial up or down to try to find that signal, to find that music, right? So that is the adjustment that you make so that you can draw in what it is that you are broadcasting.
Yeah. Let me say this, because this is key, and this is where people get messed up. This isn't easy. You don't learn to do this. You don't do one video, or a lot of Aaron's early videos were on the law of attraction. You don't just watch a few Aaron Abke videos and get it. One of the things I found, Derrick, is you have to be completely committed to the outcome.
Bingo.
You have to be totally sold out. And what people don't realize, a couple things, like completely committed and persevering. So a couple things people don't realize. We have just as human beings, we have a outcome ecology. And if you think about an ecosystem, right, you change something in the ecosystem, the rest of the ecosystem has to adapt to it, which is why a lot of us don't lose. let me just say, I was more committed to being healthy and losing weight in my 30s than I am approaching 50,
Right.
because I like the food and the drink and the comfortable lifestyle. And I'm not, and if I decide I'm going to be in the gym every day like I used to be when I was in my late middle, all the way through my life till really my late 40s,
Yep.
then I've got to sacrifice time that I'm giving to something else. I've got to sacrifice energy that I'm giving to something else.
Yep.
So just that one decision, I'm going to go. See, we think, well, I'm just going to go to the gym, but it upsets the whole ecology of your psyche. And that's why people don't achieve stuff, because they don't make the adjustments. Right. So part of me wants, yeah, I'd like to be healthier and in shape, but damn, I really am enjoying kind of the comfortable lifestyle I'm living. And right now I'm willing to sacrifice being in the gym
Yep. Yep.
and in my high school jeans or whatever. You get it? So this comes
Yep.
into play with the law of attraction too, because you have to be totally committed. And here's where we miss it. And I almost missed it with my children. I almost missed it because I was at one point, they had me so convinced. Now here's the thing. We got alienated almost by the foster to adopt community because there were so many couples like us that were trying to get babies. And I remember, like, nobody gets their first one. Like, I remember talking to one family, they had just gotten a baby the same time we did. They were on their 8th try.
Wow.
And when they found out we got our first 2 slam dunks, we weren't popular. And you can understand why. But here's the thing. At one point, I was so conflicted or so convinced that we would end up having to take that drive where we give up this baby that we had cared for and given our love to. And man, I was just so blessed in that process. So much comes back to me. I had a good friend, man. God bless him. He's not on Facebook, but I'll give him a shout out anyway. Rob Bundy, man. He came to me before church one Sunday and he said, "You're holding out." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You're holding out on that baby." And he knows me really well. And I said, "What do you mean, Rob?" He says, "You're not giving your full heart and love and enjoying, giving him everything." He said, "Because you're protecting yourself."
Wow.
God damn it, he was right. And he said, "Man, go all in and just give him everything you can possibly give him right now. Because if you don't, you'll regret it." I mean, thank God for friends like that, right?
Yep.
So, but at one point, Derrick, I was ready to ask social services to move him to a different foster family so that I could control the process and we could start grieving in our own way. If I had done that, I would have short-circuited myself. Well, I'm going to give you one more example from a couple in our church. We had a couple in our church. The guy, the husband in the couple was the chief of staff at our local hospital. So he's doctor and the boss at the hospital, right? His wife had I don't know if it was an MRI or an ultrasound or whatever it was, but it showed a lump or a spot on her ovaries. They did the blood work and she had the cancer markers in her blood work. And so they told her, they said, "We can't be sure. We're going to operate, take out the ovaries, and, we'll send them for tests. But based on the blood work and everything, good chance that it's cancer." And she decided she was going to manifest healing. And her thing was, "I'm not going under the knife." Now, not because she was going to be in denial and do what some people do, which is really a lack of faith, not going to the doctor and just walking away and whatever. And maybe some people have done that. That's fine. I'm not being critical. But her thing was, I'm gonna stand toe to toe with this thing, and I'm gonna manifest my healing. And they are going to take another radiological exam, and they're going to find there's nothing there, and I'm not going under the knife. Not going to the doctor and just walking away.
Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Crap.
I'm gonna stand toe to toe with this thing.
Crap. Oh man. Oh, that's crazy.
We are manifesting an echo.
I know. Okay, I'm sorry, man. God damn it. Okay, I think we're good.
All right. So I'm thinking to myself, there's no way they're going to take, they don't have any reason to take another radiological test. But she was determined. So I remember she's going up to the oncologist for the appointment to get her ovaries removed. And she comes over to our house and she says, I want you to agree with me that he's going to want another MRI, ultrasound, whatever it was, whatever they use.
Yep.
And she was fully persuaded, Derek. I was not. I tried to be neutral, man. Because I thought I don't want my negativity to mess her up.
Right.
So she's like, agree with us, stand with us. And so I'm like, okay, you pray, and then I'm like, okay, yes, amen. And she's not praying to Jesus because she understood this. She's like, she's declaring, I will, I will not go under the knife. That, this is cancer is gone from my body. They're going to take another radiological exam. So she goes up to the oncologist the next day, and I didn't believe a word of it. I mean, I'm just sitting back watching because I'm like, yeah, I don't believe this. Like, I don't believe this is going to, I don't believe they're going to actually order another test without you paying for it out of pocket was my thing. Because I know how insurance companies work.
Yep.
Because I've worked for one for a lot of years. And so she goes up to the oncologist's office and the oncologist says, well, we've got a couple options here. We can operate and take your ovaries out right now, next month, whatever, next week, whenever they could get it scheduled, first opportunity. Or we can wait a couple months and we can measure it. We can do the test again and we can measure it to see if it's grown. And she had to make a decision right there in that moment because it didn't happen the way she wanted it to. They didn't say, okay, let's take another radiology exam right now. They said, we'll do it in 6 months and see if it's grown. Well, she didn't want to have to deal with the mental stuff that comes with that for 6 months, right? But she said, I said I would not go under the knife. And so she said, fine, I'll wait 6 months. And she told me she walked out of that office. Her husband was with her. She picks up her stuff. She walks out of that office. The receptionist comes down the hall to get her and says, the doctor wants to see you again. She goes, after leaving the appointment, she goes back into the doctor's office and the doctor says, you know what? I got to thinking about it. Let's just go ahead and take another radiological exam and see what's there. And so you know what happened? They went and did the radiological exam and there was nothing there. Wow. And so she had both doctors, both radiologists comparing images, the oncologist, her OBGYN, and her husband, who was chief of staff at the hospital. And they all said there was something there. Now there's not something there. There was something in the blood work. Now there's not something in the blood work. And here's my point. She could have given up.
Right.
So you have to decide. And so that's why I don't use this a lot. I mean, I don't always use the law of attraction because I realize if it's going to work, I'm jumping off the cliff. I'm completely committed to this outcome, from hell or high water.
Yep.
And that takes a lot of emotional, mental energy sometimes. All right, I'm done.
You know what? Now, I'm going to make this personal because this is a story you know about, right? Yep. But I'm going to share this publicly for the first time, right?
Okay.
That I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And so when I told my family about this, I'm going to tell you what my sons told me. My sons told me, Dad, you've got too much stuff to do. You've got your finger in too many pies. You've got skin in too many games for this to take you out. So they said, you're going to be fine. We're not going to worry.
I love it.
And it was amazing that, that my sons told me this because they could have easily fallen into, oh my God, my dad has cancer mode. And so, because there's a thin line between faith and foolishness, y'all. If the doctors tell you something, get treated, get diagnosed and get treated. So Aaron, you know about all of this. All of this is nothing new to you. But I went through 9 weeks of radiation therapy. So today I talked to my GP, my general practitioner, and she said, we got your PSA results and you're fine. She said, now I'm not going to tell you what the number is. I'm going to leave that to your urologist.
Wow.
She says, but I'm going to tell you that you're fine. Now, this is not God blessing me.
Right.
This is not the blood of Jesus over me.
Right.
This is not speaking the word over me. This is simply, I believe that I have too much to do to be sidetracked by cancer.
Right.
And my sons agree with me. Now I'm going to tell for everyone who's listening, there aren't many people that know about this. As a matter of fact, if my mom hears this, she's going to be out of her fucking mind because I didn't tell her.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But I did tell you, Aaron. I told you, and I told Kyle, and I told Aaron Abke. You know, you guys are like, as far as like, you know, my internet friends. You guys are my inner circle. You three, you know. But the point is that because I had the confidence to expect that this is going to be the result, this is the result. Period, full stop. And so for the young lady who watched my video earlier this week and she was mad about me talking about manifestation, I understand. If you've been speaking to something and you're not getting a result, I get it. But if I could say something to help you, it will be this: that whatever it is that you are absolutely confident of. And so, Aaron, you were like saying, being all in, jumping completely over the cliff, you know, getting into the deep end of the pool, how you were describing that, right? That if you're willing to commit to that degree, in other words, let me say this for everyone that's watching. There is a point of no return in your life. There is a point of no return from sickness. There's a point of no return for lack. There's a point of no return for doubt. There's a point of no return for poverty, all of these things, right? And your change, your transformation, your manifestation is on the other side of the point of no return.
That's so good.
See, this is the thing, is that when we crave safety.
Yes. Yes.
We crave just, you know, just enough. And I'm going to say something else too, that within the next month, I am going to finally get the vice presidency that I've been craving career-wise. I've already, something happened today that completely changed my whole game.
Awesome, man.
And so where I've been laboring to try to get into the executive ranks, that y'all, this is about to happen. And it's not about to happen because God favored me, because I prayed, because I fasted, because I did this or I did that. No, I just simply said that this is who I am. This is what I am. This is what I've worked toward. This is what I've invested in. This is the skin I have in the game. And this is who I will be. And when you get to that point where you get over the point of no return, that's when you begin to experience the manifestation, the thing that it is. It's like Aaron with his children. He had to get past the point of no return, because the point of no return is like the last vestige of safety.
Yep.
It's the last vestige of comfort, but it's like over here, when I go over that, something is going to happen. Now I'm going to say something. I went through some training in the military, and my DI said, I'm going to push you over this cliff, but I'm going to show you how to build an airplane on the way down. See, here's the thing. Many of us go to the cliff and we jump without having the instructions on how to build the plane.
Yeah.
But if somebody is willing to show you how, or if you're willing to find out how, you can jump and you can build the plane on the way down, and instead of crashing, you'll fucking fly.
Derrick, I want to add one more thing, and I hate to because that's such a great place to end. But I want to help, like you mentioned somebody who, speaking, like we saw this too in the faith movement, right? You just say it, just confess it and possess it, blab it and grab it, name it and claim it, all that stuff.
Yep.
But here's the thing. That's not what Jesus said. I mean, Jesus said you'd have what you say, but he said you'd have what you say if you don't doubt in your heart. And so many people are declaring, but their vibration is the exact opposite of what they're saying. And so here's what I mean.
Woo-woo.
You're declaring healing because you're afraid that you're sick. You're declaring prosperity because you have a sense of lack. The issue is what's going on in your heart. So you have to be honest. So here's what I would say to people, and I'm using Jesus' words. You can speak to the mountain, and if you don't doubt in your heart, but believe that what you say will happen, it will happen for you.
Yep.
The issue is what's going on in the heart. So moving the mountain out there is no big deal. Moving the mountain in here, now that might be a different story. And if you could move the mountain in here, then you can move the mountain out there. And so here's what I mean. There was a point in time where I almost gave my son away because I wasn't confident. To bring us fully back around, I wasn't confident, but I understood how to build the airplane in this sense. I knew the issue is not out here. The issue is not what the courts decide or what family member pops out of the woodwork or what the Navajo Nation decides and the entire Navajo Nation is trying to adopt. The issue is I'm not confident. So I would go in my basement. The reason I would go in my basement and imagine being in that courtroom was because just prior to going in my basement, I was losing my shit out of fear that we were going to go through another disappointment. And I had to be honest with myself. I had to be honest with my vibration. I had to be honest with my doubts. I had to be honest about where I was living in my mind and realize that's the mountain I got to move. It's the mountain of worry that I've got to move. It's the mountain of care that I've got to move. It's the mountain of doubt, if you will, that I've got to move. Out here's irrelevant. Right. If I can manage what's in here, out there will take care of itself. And so many people are so worried about what's out there, and they just think they just declare it, and they have no clue. They're completely emotionally detached because I'm not moved by what I feel. So here's where the faith movement messed us up. Well, I just believe, brother. I just believe. I'm not moved by what I feel, so I'm ignoring that emotion. No, that doesn't work.
No.
I pay attention to my emotions because my emotions don't tell me the truth about reality outside of me, but my emotions tell me the truth about what I really believe.
And that goes back to some of the teaching that you've done about light work and shadow work, right?
Exactly.
If you're not willing to do that shadow work and find out what's going on in these deep recesses and sit with it, acknowledge it. It is a part of you.
Right.
If you're not willing to do that, let me say, I got one more thing to say before I shut up for the night, is this. Like I've driven all over the country. Listen, when I tell you, I've literally been to every one of the United States, all 50 United States, and I've been to all 12 provinces of Canada. Every single one. And a lot of them I've driven to or driven through.
Mhm.
And when you go on the Pennsylvania Turnpike between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, you're going to go through the Allegheny Tunnel. The Allegheny Tunnel is something really extraordinary because they had to dynamite and drill through solid granite to drive a highway straight through it. Now, mind you, there are many highways like US 10, or not US 10, US 40, going through like Colorado, where the highways go around the mountains. But the Pennsylvania Turnpike, it went through the mountain. It didn't even say, "Mountain, be thou removed and be cast into the sea." It said, the Pennsylvania Turnpike said, "I'm going to go through you, motherfucker." and at some point, if you want to manifest stuff, you are going to have to go. Yeah, you could go around some stuff. Yes, you could go over some stuff. Yes, you could go under some stuff. You know, I think about the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, connecting the Virginia with the Outer Banks of Virginia and the Delmarva Peninsula, and it's like you have this series of bridges and tunnels that go over and under the water to get you across. 17 miles this thing is, right? And you could go over and under you, but you could be like the Allegheny Tunnel through the Pennsylvania Turnpike, where you just go through it.
Yeah, come on.
But on the other side of the mountain is your manifestation. And that's it. That's it.
Amen.
That's it. So the thing is, manifestation, listen, just like in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light." God said, "Let there be firmament in the midst of the waters." God said, God said, God said. You have the same ability that God has.
Yes.
And you can manifest the same things in your life, just like God manifested in the universe. You have that ability, but it will never happen if you lack confidence in yourself. Now, I'm going to say this last thing. This is a Baptist close.
Right, right.
Is that you are God. You are God. And the same power that God had in the broader universe, you have in your universe. So manifest some shit, bring some things to pass. And Aaron and I would love to hear your testimony.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Because the creative power of the universe is in you. That's it. That's it. I'm done.
Me too. Good stuff, man.
Yep. Awesome as always, man.
Good
Aaron,
stuff.
you are a blessing in my life. I love you so much, man.
Love you too, man.
And for everyone else, may you be happy, may you be well, and may you be filled with peace.
Love that.